Oh, time for another Man in Gray book review. Today's book is Much Ado About Nothing by William Shakespeare. This play was originally performed sometime around 1598, and it was first published in a pirated edition in 1600. This edition by Pan Macmillan was published in 2007, and it features illustrations by John Gilbert and a short introduction by Tiffany Stern. This is part of the Macmillan Collector's Library. These are short, little pocket-sized hardback books. And the collector's library contains most of Shakespeare's most popular plays. It doesn't have all of them, but it has the most popular plays. And they all contain a little cloth bookmark so you can keep your place. Much Ado About Nothing is one of Shakespeare's most popular comedies, and in fact, it really is the prototype for almost every rom-com or romantic comedy that's come along since. There's in most of Shakespeare's comedies, there's two different plot lines that run parallel to each other and then come together at the end. And in this case, the plot lines involve two couples. In the first plot line, the couples are Beatrice and Benedict, and in the second plot line, the couples are Claudio and Hero. Benedict is a war hero. He's a soldier who's come back from a successful campaign. He's covered himself with glory. He's a big war hero. And he's staying at an estate where Beatrice lives. Beatrice is an orphan, and she's living with her uncle, Don Pedro. And the two of them are constantly, Beatrice and Benedict are constantly fighting with each other. They're constantly insulting each other and putting each other down, even though it's quite clear that they're attracted to one another. Benedict, in particular, it comes off, portrays himself as a misogynist. He's always talking about how terrible women are and how all women want to do is cuckold you, humiliate you, and so forth, and how he swears he will never get married ever because women are not worth the trouble. But it's clear that they're attracted to one another. And Beatrice and Benedict's friends cook up a plot to trick them into falling in love with each other. So that's the one plot line. The other plot line, which is the more serious one, involves Benedict's friend Claudio, who's also a soldier, and he's also come to stay on this estate. Claudio sees Hero, who's the daughter of this guy who lives at the estate, and he instantly falls in love with her, and he at a masked ball he seduces her and convinces her into marrying him, and everybody's happy. They're going to have this big wedding, and everything's going to be great. But there's a villain involved, a guy named Don Juan, who's the illegitimate brother of Don Pedro, and he was captured in this recent battle. And Don Pedro forgives him, and they're trying to make up, but Don John is determined to wreak vengeance. He's humiliated, and he's better. One of the plots that you see, or one of the themes that you see in a lot of Shakespeare's plays, are the illegitimate son who's out for revenge because he's been cut out, because he wasn't born into marriage. He's not entitled to the estates and everything. And so Don John decides to sabotage this wedding. And so he cooks up this elaborate scheme to make it look like Hero has been cheating on Claudio. And even though Claudio says he's in love with Hero, the first time he sees this evidence, he immediately believes that Hero's betrayed him. And so he decides to humiliate her in public. And so at the wedding, right before they say I do, he denounces her and claims that she's cheated on him, and then he storms off. And Hero is so shocked that she faints. And so the family decide to tell everybody that she's died from shock. And so this will give them time to figure out what to do. And this is the point where the play could easily have turned into a tragedy, because Benedict decides that he must, Claudio has betrayed him, he feels. And so he challenges Claudio to a duel. And so at this point, the whole thing could have come to a tragedy. Benedict could have killed Claudio in the duel, and Hero could have really died, and the whole thing could have ended in disaster and so forth. But it's a comedy, and so at this point, everything suddenly shifts. And so that's one of the interesting things about Shakespeare. A lot of the comedies could easily have been turned into tragedies, and some of the tragedies could have been tweaked and turned into comedies. Othello, as bleak and sad as Othello is, it could easily have been slightly rewritten and had a happy ending. where Othello doesn't kill Desdemona, and at the last minute they realize that they've been betrayed by Iago and so forth. So it could have turned into, and there's a whole series of these so-called problem plays or problem comedies where they end happily, but the ending is also rather ambiguous. Probably the best known example of one of these plays is All's Well That Ends Well, where this woman is desperately in love with a man who despises her, but he's forced into marrying her at the end. He's tricked into marrying her. And so she gets the husband that she's always wanted, but it's clear to the audience that the man she's in love with is a jerk who isn't worthy of her love. And it's obviously going to be clear that their marriage is going to be an unhappy one. And so the title, All's Well That Ends Well, may have been intended by Shakespeare ironically. Right? So that's the interesting thing about a lot of Shakespeare's plays is they kind of easily could tip from one side to the other, tragedy to comedy. But this is a comedy, and it looks like it's going to be a really sad story with hero, betrayed and humiliated in public. But the day is saved by a group of police officers led by the bumbling constable, a kind of local hillbilly yokel named Dogberry, who's always stumbling over the English language, and he's the big. He gets a lot of the laughs in the play, but he saves the day because he exposes the plot, Don John's plot to slander Hero's reputation, and then everyone forgives everyone, and eventually everything ends happily, and the battling couple eventually get together and acknowledge that they're going to get married even though they pretend not to like each other. So it ends in a very satisfying way. It's one of Shakespeare's best constructed comedies. And if you've never read a Shakespeare comedy, this is probably the one to start with because even though the plot's rather complicated, it's not nearly as convoluted as A Midsummer Night's Dream or Twelfth Night. So I would recommend, if you haven't read a Shakespeare comedy yet, that you read this one and you'll certainly enjoy it. If you love rom-coms, this is the first one. So you may go back and see where it all started. Okay, the play is called Much Ado About Nothing, and the author is William Shakespeare. This has been another Man in Gray book review. Thanks for watching.